Strange things have been happening, and I think it's because we all remembered that we participated in it. At first, the memories had completely left my mind, until I was looking through some notebooks that me and my friends would write in for role-playing during classes. We were bored and had nothing else better to do. Don't judge. I noticed that they mostly consisted of us having trips to different dimensions and timelines, that no 8-year-old could generate themselves unless it had actually happened. As I was reading through them, I started to remember little bits and pieces of a game we played on the playground during recess. I asked one of my friends, E is homeschooled now, and D lives somewhere in South Florida with his dad, to see if she remembered having played it. She said yes, so here I am. If any of you have played this or are familiar with what is described down below, please share your experiences with us. It's much appreciated. Back when I was in 3rd grade, I had a group of friends who would all go down to the playground during recess and play a game we called Wanderer. This game involved either 2 or more people standing together in an open space, holding hands, and concentrating on imagining oneself in another place. That person would then describe to the other people of what he or she was seeing, and they would imagine themselves in that place as well. It's all imagination-based, really. You had to stand on flat land, because energy flow is direct and stable in such areas. We would then use that energy to generate doorways or portals to the places that were described to us by whoever received the visions. The person who would see these places would act as a beacon to bring us to these imaginary places. To explain it simply, closing our eyes, any one of us could see the place, and the rest of us would have to listen to that person describe it in order to visit. The point of the game was for adventuring purposes. You explored the fake world, pretended to interact with the people and animals that were there, and hauled ass back to the doorway before the recess-ending bell rung. If you've ever watched Bridge to Terabithia, you can imagine that's how we pretended to play. After we returned, we'd be using the tip of our sneakers or a stick to draw a line in the land as a way to close the doorways and end the game. But it wasn't pretend, at first maybe, but later on it became something way bigger than that. We visited all sorts of worlds in our travels, encounter all manners of creatures, humans and animals, to the derelict cities that occupied them. It would take us a whole month to explore 1 or 2 of the worlds, and even then, we kept finding different things in them. Out of all the places that we came across, we frequented 3: the forest, the floating lands, and the desert. The floating lands was the first of our visits, and around that time, only Stella and I were playing. It consisted of a number of isles that floated upside down in a sky made from the ocean. We got around to visiting all of them, and each one had a name. We came across Ul, which was lined with Mediterranean-styled houses and shops. The occupants there weren't like you and I, but they were. Shadowy humanoid figures with beady yellow, red, white, blue, purple, or green eyes that looked like they were stuck back in the Sinatra era of style. We usually refer to them as shadow people, but I remember us calling them the others because they weren't like us. The remaining isles consisted of them, each with a different period than the next. We came across the forest and the desert when E and D, they didn't want me to use their actual names, joined us. The forest was a dark place, shielded from barely any light and trees that looked like they pierced the oyster-colored sky above. Its only inhabitants were the few crows we saw every now and then, red does and deer, the dark tower at the edge of this shrubbery, and the boy. The boy, which for now I'll refer to as Eric, would meet us and show us around the place. He had 2 rules for us: never stray away from him or visit the tower. If we did, Twitchers would find and eat us. He said that they were creatures that never got full and that they existed in all of the worlds, including our own. Eric was really mysterious and distant, but he was a friend nonetheless. The desert was, well, a desert. The winds were hellish, and we sometimes got sand in our clothes, but it was our favorite place to visit, mostly because they had this library filled with books we'd never read before, and the people there were very kind and generous. They lived inside this castle nested in the center of the desert, made completely out of hardened sand. So, because it was always daytime when we visited, the sun reflected off the place like a pearl. I realized after the first few months that things were starting to get serious. We were more aware and more vulnerable to these unseen worlds, and things started to notice. We were being watched and analyzed by what I didn't know, still don't. We interact with these otherworldly beings as if we had known them forever, and they did the same in return. Maybe it was the fact that we were outsiders ourselves, or that no one cared about what happened to a bunch of kids who were too smart for their own good. Maybe it was because we had reached out and touched the unknown, not expecting it to touch back. During the course of the 3 years we played the game, we found out that universe will bare its teeth at you as a warning, and bite when you keep meddling, even with the innocent and naive. I remember it being a few days before winter break that D wanted to visit the forest. He was the more peculiar one of the group, and I noticed that he was becoming too obsessed, and I knew why. I had overheard the teachers talking about how his mom and stepfather would neglect and abuse him, and that his older brother was just the same. Wandering was his way of escaping that reality, and I think that's the reason why we invited him to play in the first place. Ever since then, he had become a part of our little group. That day, E and Stella wanted to sit this one out, so me and D went. He told me previously that week he had burned his hand while helping his mom cook, so I remember feeling the leathery softness of his hand against my own. We stood side by side like we had usually, and I didn't hear any laughing or giggling. No, we had learned that whatever we were doing wasn't a game anymore. There was something otherworldly going on here, something beyond us. "It's freezing out here," I heard Stella mumble, but her voice had started to fade from perception, and I felt the cool wind blowing across my face turn into a moist, warm breeze. The transitions were so sudden, no warning, no anything. At this point, we didn't have to describe the worlds we were familiar with. Just visualize yourself being there, and we were. The place had gained a slight appreciation for color since our last visit, I will give it that. I looked around, seeing that the black leaves had turned to tints of deep reds, pinks, and oranges, against the pale background, and the grass beneath us was shading brown. D had long let go of my hand and was walking about, gathering his surroundings and smiling. It appeared to be spring from my guessing, as the crows had become white-bearing feathers of pastel blues and purples at the tips, watching us sullenly with golden eyes. "This is new," D commented, turning to me with his black beanie covering his ears and scarf wrapped firmly around his reddening face. I squinted. "For you, not for me. It does this when Eric is sleeping. Maybe he should stay asleep more often. It looks better this way." "I like it the other way." D shook his head. "Of course you would, Kira. You're weird like that." We started down the trail of dead leaves and rocks, hearing them crunch underneath our boots. Eric slept in the winter months and left the forest to occupy itself. He was the protector, the overseer of this world, and made it known that he was. I recall asking him why he never had visitors before, and he claimed he had, but didn't go on to explain further when I asked if he had hurt them or not. Coming to a small clearing, we saw Eric sleeping against a large, white oak tree. A few butterflies stilled themselves on his body, and underneath his charcoal-colored locks I could make out his pale features. A porcelain-skinned boy with dark, thick eyebrows and a pout in rose-colored lips as he mumbled softly to himself, body hidden underneath a black turtleneck and khaki shorts. I recall that Eric had the appearance of a 14-year-old when we finally saw him. It was his way of making us feel welcomed. So his actual appearance is unknown, besides the first time Stella and I visited his realm. There were these large fox-like eyes staring at us from the tree line, and I remember feeling this sudden heaviness in the air and being on edge. Anyway, back to the story. I smacked Dee's arm when I saw him easing over to touch him. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "I just wanted to say bye before we left." He frowned. "What's so bad about that?" We said to never ever under any circumstances alter the places we visited in any way. This would be you altering. I glared. We don't know the consequences to that, especially touching him of all things to do. D rolled his eyes at me. I hadn't realized until now that there was stillness. It was quiet, and I hoped that D would hurry with whatever he wanted to do and make it short. Even if they weren't nearby, I knew that they could see us. I could feel them. I looked up and saw one of the crows on a branch staring down at us. Eric stirred and spoke. Nothing would be altered except my annoyance of all of you. Pale orbs slanted a look at D and I. The colors around us dimmed slightly. Why do you insist on pestering me, even on my resting days? I shrugged. It's because we love you so much. Touching, he chuckled, closing his eyes once more. I'm always watching you. There's no need to say goodbye, unless you really mean it. Before you encounter a twitcher, everything become quiet and still, like a slow-motion video, and then you hear this incisive hissing and clacking sound, like a baby gator calling for its mother and a teapot being left on the stove for too long. We had never seen a twitcher up close. Hell, we didn't even know what they looked like to begin with, and I sure as hell didn't want to either. Eric's nostril flared, and he let out this gurgling snarl noise that made me jump. You both need to leave. Didn't have to tell me twice. D, on the other hand, just stood there, waiting. I'm not about to stand around here and be eaten by God knows what. I yanked at his arm, but he stood still as ever. We gotta go. D turned to Eric. What are they? Parasites, pest, bugs. He was slowly getting up, his body making all sorts of weird cracks and snaps. Agitation, annoyance. I'll say this again. Leave. Grabbing D's arm, I ran back to the entry point we had made and practically jumped through, panting heavily. E and Stella were staring at us with confusion. I shook my head. I felt a little lightheaded and sounds weren't agreeing with me. That was a side effect of traveling. Temporary vertigo. Don't worry about it. I crossed a line in the dirt. Let's just go. D dusted himself off and groaned. We could have finally seen what they looked like, and Eric too. Then you go on and ruin it by pussing out. Seen what? Stella asked slowly, shifting glances between us. You don't know what you're dealing with, I glared. None of us do. The least you can do is try not to get us all killed by doing dumb crap like that. D sneered. I thought the point of this was so we could explore and discover the unknown, Kira. It is. To share what we find and learn about these places. I just can't help but feel like you're keeping stuff from us. There was a pause. I felt my face growing colder by the minute as the air nipped at it. Well, he stepped closer, squinting his blue eyes at me. I shrugged. It's a game. Stop acting like it's so serious when it's not. God. The bell rang, and Mrs. Mack called for us up on the hill. Not cool, man, E said quietly, shaking his head at D. Without another word, we all headed back up, all feeling a bit distant from the other. Had I known that it was going to escalate any sooner, I would have stopped right then, when my gut told me to. Update 1. A few days ago, Stella told me that she had a dream. We share our dreams with each other all the time, because we like the concept and laughing at how ridiculous some of them are. Recently, we've gotten out of school for winter break, and before we parted ways, I remember her saying something about, I can't believe it started off as just a game, and got to that point. Fast forward to that Saturday, December 17th. She texts me and says that something weird happened, and I'm inclined to tell her my experience of being in this trance state and seeing the lights in the front room start having seizures before I actually woke all the way up. No, I wasn't high or drunk. I don't do any of that stuff. She said that in her state of what I can only describe as a sort of limbo, being awake but still asleep. She said she saw these, visages of colors and a masculine figure standing over her. His face was blurred slightly, but she made out that he was frowning. After the unnerving silence, she says she heard a faint, hey, and woke up breathing heavily and in a cold sweat. This isn't the first time she's contacted me about something like this. I remember it was last year around March that she called me around 3 a.m. one night saying that something was in her doorway, watching her. Not going to go into detail, but whether or not the game and these incidents are related, I'm not sure at the moment. I will keep you all updated as much as I can. We weren't really expecting this to get the attention that it did, but after talking to a few Redditors via PM and in the comments about their own experiences with this game or one similar to it, I've decided to continue with the updates. I have staying up most nights typing out what we remember. I asked Stella that if she and E ever hang out again, to see if he has any recounts of playing, since they don't live that far from each other. In addition to the trolls in the comments, I'm glad you think this is hilarious. It's not. User Creepy Torkids drew a picture from their experience, and it is the best description of the Twitchers that I can give, having never encountered one myself. Having heard the noise that we both talked about and the feeling I got from looking at them, this must be it. Check the pictures on screen. Here's the update. We were standing in the line for lunch. I remember we had baked chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy, baby peas and carrots, milk and those Minute Maid icy pops they used to serve us. We came back the first week of January, and not once did we talk to each other about what happened after we left. Getting all of our plates and finding a place to sit, E was the first to speak. Okay, I'm going to be the one to say it. What happened when you guys visited Eric? Two of you looked like you'd seen a ghost or something. I took the skin off my chicken and ate it. Eric was sleeping, and D wanted to tell him goodbye, and we almost had a run-in with some Twitchers. Nothing to worry about. What do you mean, don't worry about it? This the second time. Some of us have almost encountered one of those things, and we still don't know what they are. I agree, but we can't just assume this is a coincidence. D was silent, and E looked at him. It's probably his fault. I'm not in the mood. D looked explicitly tired, like he hadn't gotten sleep at all during the break, and he probably didn't, regarding the situation he was in. It pissed me off that the teachers knew, and didn't try to do anything about it, but neither could we except be his friends. Yeah, well, E opened up his carton of milk. You're never in the mood regarding this. You just use it as a getaway, right? You don't care what happens to the rest of us. I gave E a stern look and he rolled his eyes. D, however, remained quiet with one hand clutching his right shoulder. He was staring at his food with this dazed look, eyes heavy and glazed over with something. I waited until Stella and E went to go throw away their trays to finally talk to him. I didn't know what it was, but he wasn't himself. Placing a hand on the one he had on the table, he jumped a little, staring at me. Hey, are you okay? Sorry about anything that I might have did. He was unnerved and unmoving, but his lips parted to speak. I'm fine, just haven't been sleeping well. Is it your... No. He cleared his throat. It's not them. Then what is it? He was quiet, clenching his jaw tightly with this pained expression. You can tell me, all right? That's what I'm here for, and that's why I'm your friend. He licked his lips, which I noticed were cut and dry. I can't sleep at night. Every time I try to close my eyes, I just keep hearing that sound. What sound? His eyes widened a bit as he turned to me. The clicking noises, like someone is clicking a pen, but it's not a pen. I can't fucking explain it, okay? Calm down, man. He turned to stare off again. Shit's not right, I hear it in the dark. Just clicking and getting louder and louder until I just can't deal with it anymore. I feel these eyes watching me from the corners of my room, and I want to get up, but I'm afraid if I do, I'll just fucking... I swallowed. You'll what? Disappear. He was staring me in the eyes, a flicker of something, but I didn't know what it was. E and Stella came back to the table, and he looked at them under-eyed, almost trance-like. D turned from me and went back to stare at his plate and was silent the rest of the lunch period. I was feeling uneasy about everything and guilty. It was my idea to start playing the game in the first place, and my idea to involve him. Whatever he was going through was my fault. The bell sounded and the four of us headed towards the playground. The eagerness wasn't there like it used to be. No, there was something else. I was silent the entire way down to the field, even when D came up next to me, almost ghost-like in his appearance. "We shouldn't play today," he whispered. "I know," I held my head down. "But aren't you the least bit curious?" "Curious about what?" E had come up behind us and draped an arm over D's shoulder. The blue-eyed boy glared, but didn't say anything, and I let out a little giggle. "About the Twitchers," this came from Stella in a low whisper, coming up from behind a group of other girls. "The creepy crawlies of our imaginary worlds." "And about Eric," I spoke softly. "About it all. He knows something, and we have the need to know how we crossed over in the first place." Stella fell in sync with the rest of us. "Crossed over, is that what we're calling it now? We're really visiting other worlds, aren't we?" I nodded. "Yeah, we are. I don't know why or how. If we told our teachers or parents, they'd just assume we were making it up. They wouldn't believe us." Stella and E were the first down, while D and myself fell behind for a bit. He picked up a stray stick and we made our way down to the others. When we did, however, they were both gawking at something far from my view. Stella was nibbling at her bottom lip with a frown, and E had his jaw closed tightly. He took the stick from D, who snapped at him. "What the hell?" E shook his head quickly and brought his index finger up to his lip. We frowned, but didn't say anything as he pointed off into the forest. I squinted at first, not seeing anything for a good while until something weaved in and out between the branches. "The fuck is that?" My voice was a whisper with the breeze. E gripped the stick. "I don't know." It had come forward, not enough for us to make out the features, but enough for us to see the outline of it. A tall, lanky body figure staring at us with these unseen eyes. I felt nauseous the longer I watched it. E yelled and threw the stick where it was, and it landed by its feet. It moved back so far that you would have had to be looking pretty hard to pick it apart from the trees. Whatever it was wanted us to think that it wasn't there. "You guys think that it followed us back?" D was the first to speak. I stared at him briefly, but shook my head. "If that's the case, it's been out there waiting for us to get back then." "Hey!" Stella yelled. "Go back to wherever you came from, 'cause we don't want anything you got." The rest of us just stared at her like she'd killed us. She turned around dumbstruck and shrugged. "My dad tells that to people who come by and try to sell us stuff. I thought that would work here. Sorry." We never saw whatever it had been, but I always felt that it was still there, still watching. D had decided on staying back, and so we took the positions as the wanderers this time. I remember that D kept glancing back over his shoulder to make sure no one had come around, and he nodded the go for us when he didn't see anyone. Stray leaves crunched underneath our sneakers, and the three of us collectively held hands. "Ready?" Stella asked. "Yeah." I nodded and shut my eyes. We held our hands together tightly, and taking in a deep breath, I prepared for the transition. People say the darkness presses in. It doesn't. The darkness kisses up to your skin closer than a mother and whispers excitement into your ears. The darkness is your best friend. It's funny and glib, flattering and cool. The darkness will be your favorite thing right up until your exits are blocked. Then it has no reason to hide. For us, it was a route of escape onto an unknown place lost to the universe, and if it was, only few had come across it in their lifetime. I felt the warmth starting to envelop me, numbing me up from my toes to my head until all I could see were bright bursts of color rushing towards us. Golds and white, sables and tangerines flying in to form visages of where we would be. These images would all form a white light, and then darkness came just as quickly as it had disappeared. Slowly, we peeled our eyes open to see where we were. I figured we would wind up somewhere else, but as I mentioned previously, once you've visited a place enough, all you have to do is think, and you will be there. The desert always had this smell of sage and creosote, combined with this light, earthy smell and a hint of rain. There was a crow perched atop the castle. and it only looked down to caw at us before flying off. We all had come to associate crows with Eric, and in doing such, we had come across plenty on our travels. All of us assumed it was his way of keeping an eye on us, even if he never left that forest, or at least that we know of. The different places seemed interconnected to the other, and we concluded after some talking that each individual place was a realm. We hadn't known or thought of where until that day. He's such a creep. I laughed lightly with the shake of my head. He's just doing his job. Being creepy? Looking after us to make sure we don't do anything stupid? E added, already preparing to knock on the castle doors. Phi, one of the many occupants of the place, opened the door before he could, with an eyebrow raised. Her eyes changed color as she blinked. Welcome. Thank you. She was one of many strange creatures we came across. A girl with big, bug-like eyes, pointed ears, and black hair that curled at the ends against her glossing skin. Phi was extremely tall too, and I'm not saying that because we were short ourselves. I mean, she had to be the height of a basketball player at least. Are you going to come in or stand out there all day? She held the door open for us, closing it behind when we'd all gotten in. Looking around, she started sniffing, which caused us to shrivel back a little. Where's the other lad, then? D? Yeah, Phi pursed her lips. That fella. He decided to stay home because he wasn't feeling too good. E lied, and she nodded without asking more questions before starting to walk off. The inside of the place looked like a mix between your regular medieval castle and one of those movie star mansions you saw on E. Stella called after Phi. We wanted to go to the library. You know where it is. She had this weird accent to her. Come here often enough, we trust you. Stella mouthed an O, and we went our separate way. The library reminded me of one of a cathedral more so than an actual library. I remember the shelves were so tall that they almost touched the ceiling, and a weird chandelier-type thing dangled from there. All the books we read seemed to give us a little knowledge of the worlds, but nothing we hadn't already assumed ourselves. It seemed like hours that we were inside the vase room before Stella called to us a few tables down. Look at this. She pointed to a picture of something on one of the old pages. It was a shapely humanoid figure with skin peeling back over its rib and visibly empty belly. It had an inhumanly stance to it, with its faceless head, save for the thin line running across from ear to ear. It was a bluish, chalky color, this one at least. There were pictures of others with the same pastel look, various hues of light grays, blues, and blacks. What do you think it is? E pointed to the paragraph next to it and started reading. These are the lesser-known beings of the ether, but they can be quite dangerous to those who cannot properly deal with them, and a nuisance to those who can. With their horrible sounds, it's best to avoid them when crossing over, or one will end up with a pest he cannot get rid of, indefinitely. Twitchers. The top of the page was labeled Creatures of the Ether, and a subheading that read Kier. I raised a brow and looked to E, who let out a snort. What is this? Their version of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Stella shrugged. I don't know, but there was something on the previous page about the Lilin, whatever those are. Did it have any drawings? Nope, she sighed, flipping the pages again. There is this, though. Aren't those? E pointed to a drawing of velvet-colored deer. The ones in Eric's world? Yeah. Stella searched for a title. D. Dane, Dalvin, Dunir, and Duraboo? E and I exchanged looks. What's that mean? How am I supposed to know? I don't speak whatever kind of language this is. E let out a low sigh. Well, that's it then. We tried to read a bit further, but it just got more and more frustrating at that point. We gave up and left, saying our goodbyes. When we came back, I didn't see D anywhere. I figured he had left, seeing as everyone else was heading on back up the hill for class, and so I brushed it off as that. Stella made sure to cross a line out in the dirt to end the game, and the three of us headed back. D was waiting for us by the door, frowning. What? He shook his head. Nothing. Did you guys find anything? Only something about these weird-looking creatures called Kier, something called Lilin, and stuff on the deer in the forest. We can always try again tomorrow. E walked in, followed by Stella. Maybe try and get Eric to tell us what he knows. He's obligated to tell us, instead of just watching and doing nothing like he always does. At that, the wind picked up and this gush blew at us, making me stumble back a little. I heard a few rocks scrap against the concrete and looked up into the sky to see a flock of crows flying overhead. Edit. Did a little research on the names of the deer and came across something pertaining to Norse mythology. Here's the link for those of you who want to read up on it. Find the wiki link in the description of this video. Update. Did some more digging and found out that Kier in Nordic means animal. I didn't sleep too well last night because of this weird humming sound followed by, like, something hitting against metal repeatedly. Think I saw someone at my door last night, but it must have been the lack of sleep from the past 2 days. Update 2. The humming is back, but louder. The sound isn't coming from outside anymore. It's in the house. It's moving. Stella texted me 3 minutes ago. Kira, I hear it too. If this is my last update, I need you to understand something. We were never playing pretend.